Alright everybody, we're going to leave Kai to keep getting weight out of Kels. As you can see, he's deep into the roof now, and I think that we're easily going to hit our 25-pound goal. So we're going to go to Sasha's office now and do a little nerding out, and let him show you what he's been brewing up over the winter time.
Alright, how's it going guys? So yeah, a lot of you last year in the history have kind of asked or been curious about what goes on with Kels a little bit more of a deeper level. So Jesse had the idea of trying to show you a little bit of what we're doing here. Last year the car was really good, but there were a lot of little things that weren't quite right. So this year the main goal is to kind of improve the downforce to weight ratio of the car. So without adding too much drag, hopefully we can increase the downforce a little bit and then get some weight out of the car. And then otherwise, we're going to do a little bit of work to the engine. You know, that engine was pretty special, as you guys know. So we're sending it off to Jim Wolf to have a go over, make sure all of his crazy ideas don't have any problems. He has the engine now, he's taking it apart. Everything looks pretty good, little tiny bit of bearing wear, which we expected. But altogether everything was pretty good. The leak down was fine, so the engine was still healthy. We're gonna get rid of the variable cam control. That's gonna save us like 6 or 7 pounds. And we really don't need it with the electric torque in the mid-range and the sequential gearbox. So by getting rid of the variable cam control, we can increase the compression because we were limited on the piston before with piston to valve clearance. Now that the cam's not advancing as much, the piston can have smaller reliefs on the intake side. So the compression will go up more. The rings can move up higher because they were held down by the pocket for the intake cam. So that'll help a little bit as well. Otherwise, the engine's mostly the same, maybe a different camshaft for the exhaust. We had the header Swaintech coated to try and keep some heat out of the engine bay. That's pretty much it for the engine side. The next thing that I'm working on is we had a big vibration issue between the way that the rotor of the motor was coupled to the engine. So we're going to try and make a solid hub that carries the rotor that gets bolted onto the flywheel or onto the crankshaft of the engine, as opposed to before we were using that spline that you might have seen on Instagram that broke one time. And it kept loosening off and backing off. Every time we'd run the car, we'd have to take it apart and tighten that up and rebuild it. So it was not something you'd want to do an endurance race with, let's say. And I think it wasn't absorbing much of the torsional vibration because that spline interface was just not tight enough. So hopefully that's a fix. Maybe the rotor wasn't even balanced, so we'll try and get that balanced. It's hard because there's a bunch of magnets in there, so we'll have to try and find someone that is up for it. But I'd like to make sure that all that is balanced because we did have a pretty nasty vibration from about 7700 to 8200. It was kind of like wincing a bit, and it would take a bit of the enjoyment away of driving the car, actually, that little bit. So fixing that vibration will be really nice. There won't really be a performance benefit to it, but it'll just feel less like the car's going to explode all the time when I'm driving, and that always takes away from the fun a bit. What else do we have on this list? Yes, we're thinking about DRS for the wing. So we looked at doing this a few different ways. I think the best way to do it, the simple, light way to do it, is just going to be through pulling up the flap like in Formula 1 and just breaking the second flap from the main element and just having the two wings running at basically zero angle of attack. In the straightaways and then the Motec will control all of that. Obviously, we'll have a safety in place with detection of the position. So basically 2 seconds or so before the braking zone, the wing will close. If it doesn't close, I'll be alarmed with enough time, early enough in advance that I can brake in a straight line, because obviously the car will be really front aero balance at that point, so you won't want to trail brake at all. So brake in a straight line and get the car slowed down enough without losing control by the time you have to turn in. So I think with that safety in place, we should be okay, even if we have like a failure in the control system. What else do we have here? We're hoping to do a new diff. That would be really great. The Nissan differential is just getting really hot. That diff that's in the car's had a tough life, so we're hoping we're excited that we've got something coming that might be really great, but it's too early to say for sure. We are hoping to do a new front end. Kels, as you guys noticed, the bodywork has been kind of the weakest link on the car since forever. It's not really our skill here, it's composites and that sort of thing. We don't really have much ability or time for that, but we did have some great help designing a new front end for Kels with the scan data that we did, and it's going to kind of be like a GT car. It's not going to be a crazy time attack thing, so hopefully that gets done in time. I'm pretty confident that it will. We were thinking about doing an upgrade to the battery and an inverter and a new inverter to increase the voltage. The main problem we're having right now with making more power from this hybrid system is that we don't have enough battery voltage. Adding another module in series would increase the voltage to about 480 volts and increase the power by about 16 or 20%, which would get us close to that 200 horsepower goal. But we might not do that because the battery is going to add more weight, it's going to add complexity, there's going to be a lot of ducting and mounting work, and then the motor's already overheating right now. So we'll add more power, but we can run for a shorter period of time. It might just be better to leave it. I haven't decided yet on that. Like I said, the weight reduction is kind of like the main focus. When you have a lot of downforce, the sensitivity to weight increases because the amount of downforce you have is a percentage of how much weight you have. So if you've got this much downforce and you decrease the weight this much, then your downforce is twice your weight, for example, then you have a huge step up in grip. Whereas if your weight and your downforce are the same, that downforce isn't doing as much additional grip for you. So, it's kind of like where you see a really heavy GT car with no aero and a really light car like a Miata and a Camaro. Their lap times aren't that different, even though the car is so heavy. But if you were to put the same amount of downforce on each car, the Miata would basically be like a prototype, and the Camaro would be just, a little bit faster, for example. Not that we're going to get a huge amount of weight out of it, but it's just to say that spending time getting weight out of a car with a lot of downforce is like worthwhile. We're also overheating the rear tires, so just getting weight out of the car in general might help with that. Might make it worse, I don't know. What else do we have here? The fuel cell. Kind of a stupid problem we knew was probably going to happen. We had 2 lift pumps before. We cut the fuel cell in half to fit the battery, and when we did that, we only have 1 lift pump now feeding the swirl pot, and when the fuel is all loaded up onto the middle of the car, so when we're turning right, the lift pump's not getting any fuel in the swirl pot, and the top of the swirl pot is open a little bit, and the reason it's like that is so that whatever's in the swirl pot can mix with the rest of the tank, which is good for endurance racing, keeps the fuel temperature low. But now that we've got that one little lift pump that can barely keep up, when we corner and we lose half of that swirl pot out into the rest of the tank, and we've got this lift pump that's not really doing anything because all the fuel is, up in the middle of the tank, not getting picked up, we were getting those fuel pressure errors, and the car was having a miss in certain corners, like coming out of 1, coming out of 5. So those are, corners where you've got a lot of sustained high right turn G-force, and then all of a sudden you want power in the swirl pot. There's fuel in there because it's just a 1 burp and then the car's back, but it's not good for the engine. It's frustrating and it's just not right. So we'll seal up the swirl pot a bit better, and then we might add another lift pump in parallel just so that when there is fuel in that pocket, it's dumping into the swirl pot faster. We've got to fix the windshield. We've got new chassis wiring harness. So the wiring harness that's in the car right now has been in there since 2002, I think, since Cicada built the harness for, that would have been maybe Performance Nissan for Kona Challenge. So that's like an 18 or 19-year-old harness now, and we've been modifying it every year. We modified it to work with the ADL2, then we modified it to work with the C187 and the M150 wiring harness for the engine, and we're still using the existing engine harness actually, so we've got the M150 chassis engine harness, but we're actually running the hybrid system off of the original engine harness with some modifications. So it's a testament to how good the work that those guys do is, but it's just time now to get rid of it and start fresh. The harness is going to be a lot lighter. Oh, we also put a PDM in, so we had all this really massive switch box wiring that was now kind of doing a big loop and going back into the PDM. So we've got a ton of high power wire there that's really heavy, that's not going to be there anymore. So that'll be good for weight reduction. We're hoping for around 100 pounds of weight reduction. I think we were like 30 pounds on the chassis, about 30 pounds or so of less fuel we'll be able to run when we fix this fuel starvation issue. Maybe 10 or so from the chassis harness. If we do the front end, that'll be another 10 or 15. And then the rest we'll just, you know, bullshit our way through. I think that we also have some adding. We're adding some a little bit too. We have the windows we're adding. They weren't light. They were, hey, just those things were 4 pounds or something each. They were kind of thick. So anyways, if we get close to 100 pounds, that would be really great. That's probably a second-ish, maybe, a lap at most sport, just a bit under. And then, you know, part of it was just the fact that the car was starting to get loose and lose control a little bit. And I was just like, you know, the car is just overheating the tires. So just getting some weight out of the car. If we add power, we're just going to make those problems worse. And I want the car to be more like, I want the car to be enjoyable to drive over a number of laps, more like a, you know, it'd be nice to be able to do a sprint race with this thing, not just 2 or 3 laps. And with the hybrid system now, with the power turned down a bit, we could run it indefinitely. So that's not the problem. The problem was really the brakes. Oh, we need to redo the brakes too. The brakes have been on there since about 2002. They're StopTech ST40s in the front. We rebuilt them a couple times. And the factory Brembo, like the little baby track package rear calipers. So StopTech hopefully is going to help us out with doing the front. We'll probably go to the same thing we've got on our Model 3 kits, the STR60 with a 35mm disc, and the back probably an ST40 with a 28 or maybe even their small 2-piston with a 25mm rear rotor. We don't need a lot of rear brake. The car's pretty front heavy, it's got a lot of downforce. You just don't use the rear brakes a lot. So that'll add some weight too, is what I was getting to with that. So yeah, 100 pounds might be a little bit optimistic, but the car's pretty heavy. It's about 2830 or something without me. Then with fuel, we're about 3,000 pounds. So that's pretty heavy. It's heavy for a time attack car. It's about on par with a modern GT3 car, but they're all pretty heavy too. So it would be nice to get that down a little bit. So we're kind of optimistic on the work we're trying to get done this year. Generally, we haven't been too secretive about what we do. I just haven't had time to talk about it much. And Jesse wanted to do this video series, which is a good idea. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing. And I do have to say, whatever we say we're going to do doesn't mean we're going to do. These are our goals right now. If they don't happen, you know, don't cry about it. Don't say we told you so. We're just sharing with you what we're planning to do. If we're busy with Mountain Pass, if we've got some really cool products that are more important, then we'll focus on those. I mean, these are really just nice to do things for Kels because the car's had a lot of development in the last 2 years and there's just a lot of rough edges. So if we can just, you know, fix a lot of that and just kind of get the car to a more professional level, it would just be nice. It doesn't really do anything for us. We're not really learning anything specific. We're just cleaning the car up. So in terms of priority, it's not that high, and there's a good chance that some more important things will, you know, become the priority and take over. But I would, if I had to pick one thing, I would really like to do the front end and clean up the bodywork on the Z, because I think for how cool the electronics are on that car and how cool just the car is kind of in general, it really doesn't look the part. And so it would be really nice to fix that up and just get it to look like a real GT car. So yeah, that's kind of the update. Jesse will have shown you some of the drawings and stuff that I've been working on here as I've been speaking. So let us know what you think about that, and you know, maybe subscribe or something if you care about this sort of thing, or don't, whatever. Just watch dumb shit on YouTube, people talking about nonsense. I really couldn't care less. Okay. See ya.